Dr. Yvette here with Prophet Speak. Welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. I wanted to have a video session on vision and the development of vision boards. So what you see behind me is I have developed my vision board and my prayer board for 2024, but I want to talk to you about vision from a biblical perspective. So if this is something that you are interested in, stay tuned. Hello, once again, Dr. Yvette here with Prophet Speak. So I wanted to come to you and help you in terms of creating your vision board for 2024. And the principles and the guidance that I'm going to give today in this teaching will certainly work for 2024 and beyond. And so I'm going to give a biblical perspective of vision, and then I want to cover some detailed things that we find in Genesis 22 and verse 14, a very familiar passage of scripture where Abraham calls the living God Jehovah Jireh, something that you'll be very familiar with. But I wanted to give a teaching first and then walk you through the construction of my vision board and my prayer board so that you can probably consider doing your vision board in this same type of way as a Christian and as a believer. So let me start with the term that we're going to use for vision. And this is the term defined by Strong's, and it is the term for vision in what the scripture that I'm going to use to walk us through vision and understanding vision from my perspective and the way God gave it to me. And so when we talk about vision, we're going to use the Hebrew word chazon, the 2377, and that is spelled Chazon. And I'll put that on screen for you so you can see the Hebrew spelling of it. But that term means divine communication. And so as we talk about Genesis 22 and 14, remember that we're going to be approaching vision boards and writing vision from the Hebrew term chazon, meaning divine communication. So if we think about vision from a godly perspective, vision and faith are partners. They are in this together. They are in agreement together. So when you think of vision, think about faith too, because they are partners in this together. And so here is a definition that we will use for a vision being done God's way. So it is an encounter with God where he imparts special revelation. Okay, remember that. An encounter with God where he imparts special revelation. It becomes a visualization of what God intends to do in your life. Then he inspires and motivates you to pursue that vision you believe must be fulfilled. Okay, let me walk you through that again slowly. You have an encounter with God where he imparts a special revelation. So he reveals something. Then it's a visualization of what God intends to do in your life. So vision becomes a visualization, a tangible thing that God intends to do in your life. Then, because God intends to do it in your life, then he's going to inspire you. He's going to motivate you to pursue this vision that you believe must be fulfilled. So let's talk about vision and faith being partners. Remember, faith is also something that God speaks and reveals to his children. And then when he speaks and reveals it, we wait on that thing to come to pass. And when it comes to pass, we know that it has this tangible substance, and we have evidence now that God did what he said. So you can see, connect the dots. Vision and faith are partners in what God is telling you to do. So there is this divine communication. God reveals something. He gives you this special revelation. Then you visualize it, and it becomes what God intends to do in your life. Then he does two things. He inspires you and he motivates you to pursue that vision that you believe he's going to fulfill in your life. Okay, so let's take a look at Abraham in Genesis 22 and 14. This is going to be a very familiar passage of scripture. We all know this Old Testament narrative of Abraham and the sacrifice that did not take place of his son Isaac. And so this is the example that God gave me to help me walk through my vision board for 2024, and I'll be able to apply this every year, aligning myself with God every year. Okay, so let's start at verse 1. So this is Genesis 22 and verse 1. Now remember, because this is Old Testament narrative, it is a story that is being told, and it cannot necessarily be applied to the 21st century church or the first century church for that matter. It is just a narrative, God letting us know what happened with his people in the book of Genesis. Okay, Genesis 22, starting with verse 1. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. So God calls out to Abraham, and Abraham responds to God, Behold, here I am. So that's the first thing about vision and faith. You have to be able to hear God. God called out to Abraham, and Abraham responded, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So here we see that God gives Abraham some very specific instructions. Remember, I said vision is a special revelation from God. So here, God gives Abraham some very, very specific instructions. Take your son, and he's very specific because we all know that Abraham had another son, Ishmael, with Hagar, but he was not the son that God had promised him. He had promised Abraham and Sarah a son. So God is very specific. Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest. He loves Isaac because Isaac was the promise. God said thy only son, Isaac. Okay, so Ishmael, help Ishmael. Get into the land of Moriah. So he tells him where, the land of Moriah, where to go. And offer him there, meaning Isaac, for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So he tells him where to go. Go into the land of Moriah. Then he tells him what he's going to do. You're going to have a burnt offering where you offer up your son. And then I'm even going to tell you on which mountain to offer him. He says, I will tell thee of. Okay. So Abraham rose up. So here we see God gave Abraham specific instructions, what to do, where to go, and that I'm going to give you further instructions when you follow that part. So Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. So Abraham gets up. Vision and faith, they're partners, remember, both require obedience. Abraham rose up early, saddled the ass, got the wood that God told him to, because he knew this was going to be a burnt offering, gathered the wood, went to the place that God told him of. So the land of Moriah. We don't know the mountain yet, but the land of Moriah. Then, so there's a time period that passes. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. So now he sees it, still being obedient. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. Okay, this verse of scripture is very key. 1, Abraham leave the young men behind. Because remember, God didn't tell him take the young men. Abraham took young men, probably for the sake of the travel and all of the things that he had to do. Because remember, Abraham is of a good age. Now, this is me thinking, my own theology at the moment, why he would have taken the 2 men, because God did not tell him to, but we know that Abraham is of a great age. So he probably needed some assistance. But Abraham leave the young men there with the ass, so probably to watch the things that they travel with. And then he says to them, I and the lad will go yonder and worship God and come again to you. So remember, I said vision and faith are partners. So look here at Abraham's faith, him believing God. He tells them, stay right here. We're going to a place God is going to show us, and we're going to worship God. We're going to worship God. And then we're going to come to you again. So remember, God told Abraham to take Isaac in the land of Moriah. He's going to show him a mountain, and on that mountain, you're going to sacrifice your son. But Abraham, in faith, told the men that were with him, the young men that were with him, me and the lad will be back. God says, go sacrifice the son. And Abraham is like, no, me and this son will be back. His faith. Now, let me tell you what Abraham is doing. God had already told Abraham that in his seed, the nations were going to be blessed. How is that possible, God, if you just told me to sacrifice my son? How are the nations of the earth going to be blessed through my seed if you just told me to sacrifice my son? So Abraham knew by faith that something was going to happen on that mountain, that he was not going to have to sacrifice his son, because he told the 2 young men, and we're going to come to you. When we come off of this mountain from worshiping God, we're coming back to you. So faith and vision partners. So Abraham is believing. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac, his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went, both of them, together. We're going in faith. together. So sometimes your faith and vision, you may have to partner with someone. Just think about it, consider it. And Isaac spake unto Abraham, his father, and said, my father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? So Abraham didn't mention to Isaac, God said, I'm getting ready to I'm gonna sacrifice you. Come on, let's go. Because there might have been some undue challenge if Abraham had told Isaac that God said we're going into a land of Moriah on a mountain that God is going to show us, and I'm going to kill you. So Abraham didn't mention that part of what God revealed to him, that special revelation that God gave specifically to Abraham. He did not reveal that part to Isaac. So Isaac is like, okay, Daddy, where's the lamb? Where's the goat? Where's the sheep? Where is something that we're going up on this mountain to sacrifice? So then Abraham responds to him again in faith. And Abraham said, verse 8, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. So Abraham put Isaac at ease, letting him know God is going to provide. And the reason Abraham knew God was going to provide is because God made a promise to him that he was already walking out. You're going to have a son, and the nations of the world are going to be blessed because of this. Abraham has that son. The nations of the world is coming out of that seed. So Abraham knew that God was going to provide a lamb for that offering because he was already riding on a promise that God had already given him. Vision and faith going together. Remember that. Okay. Verse 9, and they came to the place which God had told him of. So in this process, God has now revealed the mountain in which to make this sacrifice. So Abraham had to continue to listen to God, be obedient, move in faith, and continue to hear God. Because now in verse 9, God has revealed the mountain to Abraham. And then it says, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order. So Abraham built an altar there, but even how he laid the wood was important to God. And laid the wood in order. Every part of what God has revealed has to be in order. So you have to continuously wait on instruction from God when you are doing something God's way. And bound Isaac his son. That must have been something to see. But Isaac having faith in his father. Because remember, a few verses above, Abraham tells Isaac God will provide himself a lamb. So Isaac like, okay, well, I'm going to go with this, Dad. I'm going to go. So he bound Isaac, his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. So at this point, in my mind, I can imagine Isaac going, the lamb better show up real quick. God, Dad and I both are trusting you. That lamb needs to show up very quick. So even in our vision, even in our special revelation from God, we may have to say, God, that lamb needs to show up really quick. So it does not mean that you're not going to get into perhaps ideas that challenge you and seem urgent. Because at this point, Isaac is on the altar, laid on that wood that Abraham put in order and bound, laid on the wood, bound. There's an urgency now, I'm sure, in the heart of Isaac. So sometimes in vision, in special revelation that God may give, there may seem to be an urgency, but continue to trust and believe God. And listen how close and how particular this gets. And Abraham, stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And then something happens. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven. Again, Abraham had to hear. He had to hear, because now my son is bound on the altar, on the wood that I have laid in the particular order that God told me to. And now the angel of the Lord calls out of heaven when I am lifting up this knife to slay my son. So just think, if Abraham could not hear God, what would have happened? Vision requires us to hear God. Vision, seeing things God's way. Vision, divine communication from God, requires for us to hear God and be in relationship with God, to do things his way so that he can provide. Like Abraham said, God will provide himself, because I'm doing this because God has said, God has required me to do it. So God will provide himself a lamb. So this vision is God's. God will provide himself a lamb. Let's keep going. And the angel of the Lord, verse 11 again, and the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here am I. I'm listening. Here am I. And he said, lay not thine hands upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. So God stops Abraham because God now knows for sure that Abraham loves him, listens to him, take direction from him, believes him. God knows that now. So he says, for now I know that thou fearest God. So him walking in faith, him getting up and doing, him following the direction of God, him listening to God's instruction. Now God knows that Abraham fears him. And then he tells him how he know it. Seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. Now I know that you fear me, because you haven't withheld from me that thing that I know you love. And Abraham, after this conversation with God, lift up his eyes. Because see, now the angel of the Lord have called out of heaven unto Abraham, and Abraham stops. He stops the sacrifice of his son. The angel tells him not to lay his hands on him. So Abraham stops. So now that Abraham has stopped and he's having this conversation with God, and God has let him know, now I know you fear me because you didn't withhold your son from me. So now Abraham is looking up, because Abraham, like, I know my God is a complete God. So I know that some sacrifice is going to take place here today, and I know it's not my son. So I'm going to look up to see vision. I'm going to look up to see what God is going to provide. Because remember, in verse 8, Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb. So now Abraham lifts up his eyes to see the provision that God has for himself. God will provide himself a lamb. So now Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked. Where's the lamb? God is going to provide for himself a lamb. Isaac, don't worry. So now I'm going to look up, because you told me, God, don't touch him. So now I'm looking. I'm looking for that thing that you're going to provide, because you told me not to touch my son, and you've told me why not to touch my son. So now I know we up on this mountain to worship you, and things are going to be complete. So now I got to look. I got to see something that you are going to do. I got to see something that you, God, are going to do. And looked up, and behold, behind him. Behind him. So vision for Abraham required him to turn. Not just stay straight, but he had to turn. I need to see this lamb that God has provided for himself. Abraham had to turn. Okay, well, God, I told Isaac that you would provide for yourself a lamb. Now I got to look up and see what I know you will do. I got to see it. A special revelation, divine communication. That's what vision is of God. Divine communication. I got to hear God. I got to follow his direction. I got to see. Behold, behind him, a ram, a male goat, caught in a thicket by his horns. Now, let me tell you something. This is my spiritual imagination, because the text does not tell us this, but Abraham had to get on that right mountain. Okay, because remember, over here in verse 2, he tells him, go offer a sacrifice in the land of Moriah. Offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. So if we skip over here to verse 13, the ram caught in the thicket by its horns, Abraham had to be on the right mountain. God said, I will tell thee of. God had to tell him which mountain, because God has made the provision. God will provide himself a lamb. God has made the provision, and the provision for this vision and this faith you're going to walk in is on a particular mountain. So you need direction from God to know the right mountain. The right mountain. The ram caught by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So now Abraham and Isaac are doing just what he told the young men they would do. I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. So now they are fulfilling what Abraham even said. We're going over yonder to this mountain God told me of. We're going to worship and we're coming back to you. So now they're worshiping. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So now they're worshiping. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh. So because God did something, because God provided something, Abraham named that place. And this is what it means. See, the body of Christ have shortened it, but I like its long form. I love this long form of what Jehovah Jireh means. And it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. In the mount of the Lord, in the mountain that God will tell thee of, in verse 2, in the mount that God will tell thee of, the Lord it shall be seen. So the place that God tells you, reveals to you, that's where you're going to see him. Jehovah Jireh, as it is said today, to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. You can see it in the mount of the Lord. That place, that thing that God has revealed, that he has shown you. So when you write your vision should be this divine communication between you and God, this direction, this insight, this wisdom that God gives you. He's going to reveal to you something, this special revelation. Then it becomes this visualization of what God intends to do in your life. Let's revisit it. Let's revisit the definition. Vision of God. An encounter with God where he imparts this special revelation. It becomes a visualization of what God intends to do in your life, then inspires and motivates you to pursue that vision you believe God must fulfill through you. So it's a special revelation that God gives. It's a visualization, something you can see that God intends to do in your life, and then he inspires and motivates you to pursue that vision that you believe by faith must be fulfilled. So when you are constructing your vision board for the year, when you are putting together your vision board for the year, it should be this specialized revelation that God has revealed to you of what he intends to do with your life. Now, what happens if God does not reveal something? Wait. You can have this vision and goal for yourself, which most of us do. Have a vision and goal for yourself. And I call that having secular faith. Spiritual faith, God reveals it. Remember, vision and faith are partners. They walk hand in hand. Faith, something God tells you. Spiritual faith, something God tells you, something God reveals, something God shows you, something God speaks. Spiritual faith comes from God. Secular faith, that's yourself. God didn't say it. God ain't whispered it. You ain't dreamed it. He ain't mentioned it. You want to do it on your own. Spiritual faith, God reveals it. He says it. Abraham, go into Mount Moriah. Go to a mountain that I am going to tell you of. Sacrifice your son, your only son. God revealed it. Told Abraham what to do. Told him where to go. Took the wood. Put the wood in order. Bound his son. Laid him up on the altar. Answered his son's question. Vision. Direction from God. Hearing God. And then he calls out of heaven. The angel of the Lord calls out of heaven and stops him. so that Abraham could see what God was providing for himself. So Abraham could see. He had to even look behind him. So Abraham could see the lamb that God was providing. So vision becomes something God reveals. We pair it with our faith, that tangible substance that comes to pass. Vision and faith hand in hand. So when you're constructing your vision board, let it be the thing that God has revealed. And continue to hear and listen and receive direction from the Lord concerning that thing that he has revealed. So I am going to pause for just a moment and reposition myself so that I can take you through a vision board God's way. I'll be right back. Okay, here we are. I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but I needed to transition myself so that I could be on the side where my actual vision and prayer board is. And so let's continue. So for 2024, I have created my vision board and my prayer board. And the reason why it is two parts, vision board and prayer board, is because there are some things that I have on here that are not things that God revealed. So those things I define as secular things. Things that I want to believe God for. He didn't reveal it, but they are the things that I'm believing him for. So I include those on there so I can continue to pray about them. So let's start. On this side here, I have my titles, and I will scan in very close with my phone so that you can see these things up close and personal. But on this side, I have spiritual. So these are the things, faith, God reveals. So these are the things that God has spoken to me, like he did Abraham. And I know that these are the things that I am going to have to walk out by faith. These are the things that in the mount of the Lord, this is the mountain things. In the mount of the Lord will be seen. So these are the actual vision that God told me to do for this year. So one, and I'm not going to talk about it all, but just so that you have an idea. One of the things that God told me to do was to create and focus on this YouTube channel, to get more spiritual teachings on this YouTube channel. So God spoke it, revealed it. I've had divine communication with God about this channel. So here I have YouTube. So with that, I am going to put up the different ideas that God gives me for YouTube to place on this channel as teachings. So that's why this is on the spiritual side of the vision board, because these are the things that God has revealed. Okay. Then I have a pair of glasses here. Let me move back. A pair of glasses here, because in the prophetic word that God gave me for 2024 and beyond, he said to all of us to focus. It's something that God revealed. So because God said it, I know I need to focus. And when I think about focus, things coming into true sight, me being able to see things clearly. So focus. So I put the glasses on there. Then God told me to, this is a picture of me in my doctoral robe. God spoke to me years ago why I needed to earn my doctoral degree. This is revelation from years ago, but I put it on there because it is a reminder. God told me I needed to earn my doctorate because the people he was going to put me before, I needed to earn my doctorate so that there is a level of respect that would come to me because I had the degree. And so as he puts me before these people in 2024 and other years, this is on my vision board to remind me of what God spoke, why I earned that degree. And then I put a little tag here that says praise under it, because when he puts me before people and I can't believe who I'm before, I can notate it here. I've already seen part of this vision come to pass. I've met Colonel Gatson. Yes. Colonel Gatson was in the movie Battleship. He was the colonel at Fort Belvoir, and I met Colonel Gatson. I've sat and talked with him, but that doctoral degree put me in a space to where I have met Vern Clark, the CNO of the Navy. I have met Colonel Gatson. If you haven't seen the movie Battleship, he's the Army colonel that was in that movie with the titanium legs. I have met, anyway, the vision coming to pass. Why did you earn that degree? Because you're going to need it for the people I'm going to put before you for a level of respect. Vision. When the Lord spoke the prophetic word for 2024, he said, pray for peace for humanity. So I put a little clip here for peace and the people that I pray for. And as I hear people talk about peace in their life and peace, I'm going to notate that here. Things that God has spoke coming to pass. He told me to focus on, in my coaching, the KWL method. So I've already been coaching people using the KWL method. So that's up here on the board. And so just the things that God has spoke is what I put on my vision board. Now let's switch sides. This side says secular. Faith that I'm going to need that is self-desired. So the things that I am praying about, things that I am petitioning God about, not things that he spoke where I know he's going to provide like he did for Abraham. Our scripture here, and Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So in the mount of the Lord, in that place that God revealed that he spoke to you, is where you're going to see it. These are my mountain things. The mount of the Lord where it can be seen. These are the things that's not on that mount. But am I believing God for it? Yes, because the Bible teaches that if our ways and things that we do please God, he'll give us desires of our heart, that he takes pleasure in us being blessed. So I have some things over here. My next car, I'm praying about it. What should that be? I've added to this side, trust. Even though God spoke over here about trust for this year, trust, some areas where I need to trust God. Then I have over here grace, and I have little papers in there where I am documenting areas where I need God to grace me. We get that idea from the Apostle Paul. I can't get it back in there. But we get that idea from the Apostle Paul. It wouldn't have been that tough if I wasn't on camera. But we get that idea from the Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul asked God 3 times to remove that thorn from him. And God did not. So Apostle Paul said, thy grace is sufficient. Because you're not going to remove that thorn. I know that you're going to grace me to deal with it and to keep going with the vision that you have given me to take the gospel to the Gentiles. I know that you're going to grace me because you did not remove this thorn. So there are some areas in my life that I've got to pray about. God didn't speak it, but I've got to pray about it for God to grace me. And then I need to walk in love in some areas. So when I recognize that that is an area that I need to walk in love in, it goes inside this little slit right here where love is. Lord, show me how to walk in love in this area. And the little cactus with the glasses on it, the vision that God always gave me for my family and to pray for my family. So the cactus represents Texas, although I'm from Fort Worth and you don't see a lot of cactus, but it is a reminder, this cactus with the glasses on, for me to pray for my family. And these zazits hanging here is a reminder for me to pray for health for me and for my husband and others, that we will prosper and be in health even as our soul prosper. So those are reminders. So I incorporate, oh, I got to talk about her. She's cute. I sell designer eyewear, designer sunglasses. God didn't tell me to. It was something that I did on my own. And I have to pray about that God allows that business to stay blessed, where I sell my designer glasses to young ladies and women out there that want to wear designer glasses, but they don't want to pay $400 and $500 for them. So I get them out of France so that I can sell them cheaper than stores. But I need God to guide me and bless that. Not something God told me to do, something I did out of my own self-desire, but I still pray that God would bless it so that my sunglasses sell, and so that young ladies will know, oh, let me go buy those Prada shades from Dr. Yvette because she sells them for much less than the store that she sourced out of France. And so I wanted to show you the vision board. Of course, I made it cute. If my daughter allows me to share hers, I will. But we both built it based on two things. Things that God revealed, because in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. These are the things that he is going to provide himself a lamb. He's going to provide himself provision to do the things that he is requiring of us. And then we have the other side, the things that we desire, the things that we want to do, the things that we're praying about, that God would bless and get behind, because it is a desire of our own. So I hope this teaching on vision and prayer boards has helped you. I hope that even if you have created your vision board for 2024, that you would go back and revisit it, and that you would separate it into two parts, like I and my daughter have done. The things that God has revealed, and the things that are the mount of the Lord shall be seen, the things that he will do, and then the things that you desire. Separate it so that you can mark it off the list. These are the things that God said he would do, and he's done it. And here are the things that I desire for God to do, and he's done it or not. His grace is sufficient, but you'll know the difference. Until the next time, stay blessed. And if you're watching and this blessed you, then like this video, share it with your Christian friends or anyone else that you know that has vision, and comment below. Let's talk about it. But also, if you are a person that need help with your vision, then connect with me on my website. I do offer consulting and training when it comes to, for vision. I create visions for organizations, large organizations. So if you're struggling and you have a company and you need a vision statement and direction for your vision, then reach out to me using my website, and I can certainly let you know what that's like if you bring me aboard to do your vision for your organization. Again, I am Dr. Yvette with Prophet Speak. Be blessed.